Greetings, programs. This is Wretch, and welcome back to Shadowrun Dragonfall. In the last episode, Wretch here perused the cruise bazaar and caught up with all of our residents. And I thought we were going to go ahead and talk to Paul Amsel and get the next stage for Frau Mueller's job taken care of, but apparently I need to man up. I got a message from one of our viewers letting me know that I'm actually missing some dialogue options that'll lead to one of the most interesting quests in the game. Now, first off, if I'm ever doing a playthrough and I'm missing like a big quest like this, go ahead and tell me. I have got no qualms with that whatsoever. I mean, if that's what you guys want to see, I'll be happy to head that way. But all of this is with Glory. Now, I thought I had used up all the dialogue options with Glory. I thought she was just going to be the Ice Queen. But apparently, if you keep pushing her, she eventually cracks out of her cybernetic shell. So let's chat with Glory here. Okay, Wretch, what do you need? Let's ask how she's holding up. Don't worry about me, I'm solid. Okay, you sure? You look like you're a million miles away. These are the normal options. I'll be with you when it counts. Right now it doesn't. Alright, apparently here. I have a question for you, Glory, of the personal kind. I'm not big on sharing sport, personal reasons. You understand, I'm sure. The edge in her voice tells you that she's not interested in continuing this conversation. Well, if you ever want to run with me again, you'll answer my questions. Now. I don't respond well to threats or ultimatums. Something in the tiny woman's voice sets you on edge. There's something deeply wrong here. Somehow, you're certain of it. You want to watch that in the future. Now, walk away. Now, that right there, that's where I thought that we were pretty much done in terms of the dialogue options. So, let's see. Let's just do the sure I understand, but I still need to talk to you. I went the forceful route. And when a woman says what she says right here, you know, you don't try and press the issue, especially from my experiences with women and being in a relationship for a long time. When someone says something like that, you don't try and push. You go to the Winchester, you have a pint, and you wait for this whole thing to blow over. So, let's go ahead and see where we go here. Let's use the soft approach. Glory lets out a weary sigh. Ask your questions, but do it quickly. I have things to do. Well, you can't have started running the shadows much more than 5 years ago, tops. What's with the vintage chrome? It was cheap. It gets the job done, she shrugs. End of discussion. I don't think so. I've known a lot of street Sams in my time, but I've never met anyone who voluntarily installs cyberware that old. You're right. There's more to it than I'm letting on, but I'm not interested in talking about it. Well, I can't help but notice that you seem guarded, withdrawn. No, you think? And that's my problem, and none of your concern. If whatever happened to you has impaired your ability to trust me, then it is my concern. Come on, Glory. Talk to me. Trust is earned, and I don't know you yet. Maybe later when we get to know one another better, we can talk. For now, I prefer if you dropped it. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Ask her how she's holding up again. Alright. Now, let's see if we can talk to her again. Glory's... Okay, there's something new. Glory's expression remains distant, but her lips curl upward into a hint of a smile. Wretch, need anything? Oh, we're breaking through. Well, let's just go down the line here. Everything still okay with you? You never need to worry about me, Wretch. I'm fine. I'd still like to know more about that chrome you're sporting. That's not a story that I'm interested in telling out of context. If you really want to get into it, we're going to need to go back. Way back. She stares at you with her cold, dead eyes. I'm not sure that you want to do that. Well, you say that you'll give me answers when we talk about your past, so let's talk about it. Why do you care? There's no hostility in her voice. If anything, she sounds suspicious. Because I'm the leader of this team, and I need to know as much as I can about the runners who are working with me. That's very true. She pauses for a moment, considering. Then she nods. Alright, fine. We can talk. But we're doing it on my terms. This is a long story, Wretch. Long and ugly and cruel. Are you sure that you want to hear this? Please. Alright. I'm going to start at the beginning. Not for you, for me. I guess that it might help me to say all of this out loud. She takes a deep breath and slowly releases it. When she speaks, her voice comes out in a cool monotone. My family lived in Stuttgart. It was a nice enough place, I suppose. My parents worked as wage slaves for IFMU. My mom was a good person. Once upon a time, my father was a decent person as well. That's what Mom always told me, but I never knew him that way. She pauses for a long moment. When she begins speaking again, some of the ice has fallen away from her voice. For the first time since you met her, Glory sounds alive. The dad I knew was an old, damaged Euro war vet who turned to hardline religion to make sense of the world. In Stuttgart, that meant either the Ritter Christi or their fascist cousins, the Kreuzritters. My father chose the latter path. I still remember hiding in my room when my father had his Kreuzritter brothers over for prayer group. They would drink and get rowdy, then spend an hour or two riling themselves up with talk about heretics and the devil's work. Then they'd go find some poor elf or dwarf, stomp the living crap out of him, and drown him in the Neckar. Holy crap. Meanwhile, I'd be holed up at home with Mom, who would commemorate the evening by drinking a bottle of wine and crying herself to sleep. Ooh. I'd like to get my hands on your dad and his crusaders. See how they like pushing someone who can push back. This is very similar to humanists. It's a common sentiment, believe me, but I appreciate the thought. Anyway, aside from the fact that my dad and his buddies were a bunch of murderous asses, life was pretty normal. I went to school, made friends, hung out with my mom, kid stuff. Then I turned 14 and everything went to crap. Glory pauses, then swallows hard. Ever so slightly, her cheeks flush red. Suddenly she looks self-conscious as if she's just snapped out of a trance. As quickly as it came, the flush of emotion disappears. Her voice frosts over. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Well, airing this stuff out is clearly helping you work through it. Yes, it is. Glory stares at you through cold, dead eyes. But I'm not going to be able to get through this in one sitting. You need to understand that. She turns away from you, her movements mechanical. Now, let's get back to the job at hand, shall we? Okay, you've had time to process, let's try again. For the first time since you met her, Glory's expression seems to brighten. It's subtle, but it's there. You're sure of it. Wretch, a pleasure, as always. Need anything from me? I like this, I had no idea. How are you doing, Glory? Golden as always, Wretch. No problems here. If I didn't know any better, I think you were warming up to me. Okay, good. She studies your face for a moment before responding. I thought she was just going to punch me with her claws. I suppose that you might say that. I don't talk to many people, Wretch. Just doesn't seem to be worth the effort. I understand entirely, Glory. I don't really feel much anymore. Not since... She caresses the chrome of her forearm with a hand made of articulated steel. This. Well, if that's true, why are you still talking to me? I suppose because you've shown an interest, and because you haven't let me push you away. She locks eyes with you, her expression is blank. I don't want to mislead you, Wretch. I still don't feel anything. Not warmth or friendship or even trust. But I can appreciate the effort that you're making. It's something new, and it's worthy of exploring. Are you ready to tell me about the chrome? I'm getting there, Wretch, but you'll have to give me some time. The answers will come when they do. Well, let's try... You said that things went bad when you turned 14. I'd like to keep talking about that. She stares at you, her face expressionless. No, I'd rather not. Well, why not? Because I don't see a reason to. The memories are unpleasant, and dredging them up doesn't serve any real purpose. Well, you're wrong about that. The last time we talked, it had an impact on you. That's reason enough to continue. She pauses a moment to consider your words, a troubled look on her face. I suppose that's true. Feeling discomfort is better than feeling nothing at all. Wow, that's interesting. Alright, here's the deal, Wretch. I'm going to talk. You listen. When I'm done, I'm done. No complaints and no arguments, and we'll see what happens. Deal? Okay, deal. Right. 1,000-meter stare creeps back into Glory's eyes. A moment later, she's locked away in her own head again, reliving memories that she'd long since filed away. So a few days after my 14th birthday, I began to express. Magically. Oh, wow. Okay, so... Okay, go on, Glory. There's another long pause, and Glory becomes more animated. Anyway, I turned 14, and I awakened. I don't even remember how my parents found out about it anymore. I think that my dad caught me playing with a tiny city spirit that I coaxed out of a pile of garbage, something like that. With everything that happened afterward, those days are kind of a blur. What I do remember is my father's response to the revelation that his little girl was a witch, a hex. He beat the living crap out of me with his fists, and then his belt, and then a claw hammer that he grabbed out of his toolbox. Hell's bells. All the while, my mother was screaming and flailing at him. She took a couple of licks with the hammer, too. Well, what about the neighbors? Didn't anyone call the police or the prosecuritus? Oh, sure, they did. Our neighbors were perfectly decent people. Even if they couldn't admit it to themselves, they knew what my father was up to. Then they heard a woman and a little girl screaming bloody murder. They were the first to pick up the comm. Unfortunately, police response times can leave a little something to be desired. I assume that they showed up eventually, but I'll never know. I was out of there well before anyone showed up to intervene, but we'll get to that in a second. So finally, after what felt like an hour, Dad stopped tuning me up with his hammer. I had broken ribs, a busted arm, I couldn't see out of my left eye, and my entire right side was covered with one giant bruise. I was bleeding all over the place, making a real mess of the carpet. The old bastard spat on me, his bleeding, crying daughter. He spat on me, and he told me I was des Tefes Hua, the devil's whore. Then he kicked me out of the house. Couldn't he have done that first? I mean, I know he's a prick, but before the claw hammer and everything? As I was crawling away, my father told me that if he or any of his Cruise-Ritter brothers ever saw me again, they'd treat me as the Berlin chapter treats the enemies of God. If you're not familiar with how the Cruise-Ritters here in Berlin deal with heretics, it's decidedly less pretty than what my dad and his buddies did to their victims. I got the hint, and the next morning I hitched a ride out of the Stuttgart. Well, that's a gutsy move. You were a smart kid. Not that smart. Slowly, sadly, Glory shakes her head. But we'll get to that in a minute. I wound out in Tübingen. I figured it'd be a safe enough place to find medical attention and maybe a call home. It's not far from Stuttgart, but has a huge student community that I figured I could blend into, and the university there has a decent magic department. My ride dropped me off at the university hospital, and they patched me up pretty good. Had some questions for me about how I gotten so beaten up, but I lied and told them that I'd be mugged, which played nicely into my complete lack of cash, credit, and identification. She is very street smart. Glory pauses for a moment, looks down at the floor, then fixes her eyes on you. She is visibly tense. We're going to fast forward through the next few years. I was a kid on the street. I got by as best I could, doing whatever I had to do. The rest we can leave up to your imagination. Good? Good. Good. Glory's clenched jaw relaxes somewhat, and the tension drains out of her shoulders. Thanks. So anyway, I lived on the street for a few years, got used to being hungry all the time, got used to getting rained on, got by. I was painfully aware that I had magical talents, but without any kind of training or guidance, I didn't really know how to use or develop them. Truth be told, they scared me, so I more or less ignored them. So I just sort of went like that until a few days after my 17th birthday. Then I met Marta, and everything changed. Marta was a sweet girl. At first I took her for a street kid like me. Her clothes were a little ratty, but she seemed comfortable being near me. But she also looked well-fed and happy, and those two things where I hadn't been in years. We started hanging out, and before I knew what was happening, I was in love. Aw. There was a genuine attraction between Marta and me, I think. But I also think that a lot of my affection for her came from the fact that she was the first person in years to give a damn about me. She cared, and I loved her for that. Glory pauses. She looks flustered, her composure cracked. I bet she hasn't talked about her in a long time. Keep going, Glory. She stares at you for a beat and then nods. A few ragged breaths later, she continues. Marta told me about a place where she'd been hanging out. She invited me to join her there. It was called Fürstel, the fireplace, and it was sort of a commune for dispossessed youth. It turns out that a lot of the street kids I'd known over the years had moved there. The way that they disappeared, I assumed that they'd been kidnapped or killed or gone back to their parents. But there they were. I remember being kind of angry about it, like, how did everyone get the memo about this but me? You know, I suddenly realized something, and for anyone who knows anything about Shadowrun, I can already see where this is going because her magical talent, all of these cybernetics and whatnot, they take her essence, her magical ability away from her. So she doesn't have any magical ability left, really, because she has so many cybernetics. So she's not really awakened anymore. Or she's awakened, but she's kind of in a nightmare. So let's see if we can find out where this goes. Marta calmed me down. She was good at helping me work through my feelings. And I wound up following her to Fierstel. To a street kid, it was basically paradise. The owner, a guy named Harrow, had set up this little farm just outside Tübingen in the Schönbuch forest. Schönbuch is officially a nature park, but not many people go there nowadays. Too much fear of paranormal animals, I guess. Anyway, park or not, it was plenty big enough for us to hide in. It was also safe and pretty, and the farm was well stocked with food. Most importantly, Fierstel gave us a sense of community and stability that we never had on the street, and we loved Harrow for that. He became like a surrogate father to us. Glory pauses again, and you recognize the distinctive flush in her cheeks. She seems to have come out of her reverie once again. That's enough for now. I need to process all of this, and I don't want to continue forward until I've had a chance to do that. I know that this all happened years ago, but I guess it's still pretty raw to me, so I'm going to ask you to give me some space for a while. She turns away, and the frost begins to creep back into her voice. We can pick it back up later. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's plenty of time to process. Glory's pallid face lights up at your approach. A genuine smile spreads across her lips. Wretch, good to see you. We are breaking through that shell. You too, Glory. How are things with you? She pauses for a moment, considering. You know what? I'm happy, actually. For the first time in a long time. I have to thank you for that. Well, that's good. You ready to tell me about the chrome you're sporting? Be patient, Wretch. The explanation for that is coming. A look of unease floats across her face. I'm not sure that you're going to like it, though. Well, you needed time, and I gave you time. 5 seconds worth, in fact. Are you ready to talk about Fierstel yet? Yeah. Glory looks troubled, more so than you've seen her before. Whatever memories she's dredging up must be exceedingly painful. I'm not going to lie, I haven't been looking forward to this, but yeah, it's time. Wretch, look, I'm going to tell you some things about myself that might change your opinion of me. It's entirely possible that you're going to hate me based on what's coming up next. I've accepted that, and if that's what happens, I sincerely believe that I deserve it. Wow. That's a hell of a prelude. She looks you in the eye, her expression grim. So tell me, are you sure that you want to keep pushing forward with this? Well, this is important for you, Glory. After everything that we've been through, I think that we both know that. Whatever you have to tell me, I'm ready to listen. Thanks, Wretch. Thanks for being a friend. So when we left off last time, I had just moved from the streets of Tübingen into the warm, inviting confines of Fierstel. Marta and I were happy there for a little while, and Harrow embraced me as a long-lost daughter. I should probably take a moment to talk about Harrow. He's going to be an important figure in this story, or Harrow. I don't know what his age was. He seemed old enough to be paternal, but young enough to hang with the kids on something like a peer level. Best guess, I'd say he was in his mid-20s. He was handsome and well-built, with a neatly trimmed beard and thick brown hair, and there was something else about him, something uncanny. Harrow had this charisma, this raw, magnetic attraction that just made people latch onto him. I saw it over and over. All it took was a few words and a pat on the shoulder, and Harrow would have a new convert. The other kids at the farm followed him around like lost puppies. He's probably a cult leader, or a Fagin. As much as I loved Marta, and as much as I thought she loved me, we forgot all about one another when Harrow was around. All that we wanted was to be close to him, to be a part of his inner circle, and soon enough, we were. For a girl of 17, it was all terribly exciting. Harrow had these rules of living that he would teach us, rules about self-determination and the importance of disobedience. He claimed to have taught classes at the University of Berlin, which he painted as a mix between an earthly paradise and an anarchist playground. He told us how Fierstel would be the focal point of a new movement for the children of the fatherland. He told us that we were special. We ate it up, of course. We were kids. For those of us in the inner sanctum, Harrow would share even more. He had power the likes of which I had never seen. Not my father's drunken fist or my own childish experiments, but genuine, incredible power. He said that it came from the Horned God, an ancient deity that he venerated. He knew about my latent abilities right away, and he offered to teach me. Naturally, I accepted. Yeah, let's go ahead, and this Haro is beginning to sound a lot like a cult leader. You're not wrong there, but it gets a whole lot worse than that, as you'll soon see. Glory sighs. Hang with me, Wretch. Rough waters ahead. So I became Haro's apprentice. He taught me to channel magic and summon spirits. He taught me rituals and pagan traditions, Machiavellian philosophy and Nietzschean ethics. Above all, he taught me to connect with this horned god, and through it I learned power and arrogance, and it was all downhill from there. For the next few years, I lived at Fierstel as Haro's enforcer and right-hand girl. I was also his sometimes wife and concubine, but that was a distinction that I shared with all of the girls in the commune, including my beloved Marta. I came to learn that she'd been his long before she met me, and by that point, I didn't care. I'd embraced the rules of living. I was Haro's creature through and through. I didn't ask questions, and I walked the path that was in front of me. Other fun facts about those years: I learned cruelty. I had power now, and my new idol encouraged me to use it. Haro did the same. Any children who didn't pull their weight were subjected to my tender mercies, and I was anything but tender. I took what I wanted rather than asking for it. I liked it. It was fun. I also came to learn that Haro's Harn god was not the Eischen first worshipped by throwback cults across Germany. It was certainly a god with horns, but it came from an altogether different tradition. Care to hazard a guess? Oh, holy crap. The devil? In the magically active community, we refer to it as the adversary. But yeah, same being, more or less. Oh, she was in a satanic cult. So my idol, the ancient deity that was feeding me my power, was the antithesis of everything that is right and good. And you know what? I didn't care. In our time together, Haro and I committed more atrocities than I could count. At this point, I was onto all of his tricks. I knew that Fierstel was nothing more than a honey trap, carefully designed to lure local children into my master's clutches. I knew that the kids who seemed resistant to Haro's brainwashing techniques wound up fertilizing the garden. I knew that Haro's entire manifesto was bull. And I knew that through it all, Haro and the adversary were laughing, because I was laughing right there beside them. I don't want to pin the blame for my decisions on anyone but me. That said, I would like to post that my father's connection with the cruise ridders might have helped play into my willingness to serve the adversary. In my warped, indoctrinated little brain, I equated the church with evil, so the opposite of that. I figured it had to be. Well, if not good, then at least not totally bad. And that's very true. You see those religiously fanatical parents and whatnot, they drive people away from faith and religion and all that kind of stuff with their dogma. But I was kidding myself, of course. My new deity was the very definition of bad. Serving it made me bad. End of story. Well, she's aware of what she did. I can't excuse the choices that you made, but I can understand why you made them. Gotta walk in her shoes. That's big of you, Wretch. I genuinely mean that. Glory takes a moment to steel herself and then continues on. Anyway, one day, Haro invited me on a field trip to Stuttgart. Over the years that I was at Fierstel, the commune had easily doubled in size. It was thriving, all thanks to the efforts of Marta and girls like her. Haro would send the girls out to neighboring cities to lure in the street kids that nobody would miss. He targeted children because they were so easy to indoctrinate, and because nothing makes the adversary happier than the corruption of the innocent. As we drove out to pick up the new recruits, I was already planning ahead. It was a foregone conclusion that I would pay my father a visit. The irony of a group of cruise ridders getting emulated by a genuine servant of the actual devil tickled me to no end. So when Haro stopped to fill up on diesel, I hopped out of the van and headed out on foot to my parents' place. Haro wasn't overly concerned about my absence. I had long since reached the point where I could assert my autonomy, yeah, that word. I always have trouble pronouncing that, and he knew that I'd be back. I wound up at my folks' house sometime around noon. I could hear the adversary whispering in my ear, telling me what to do. I'd long since learned to listen to its voice. It always rewarded me with extra power when I did its bidding. It told me to knock, so I did. As the door opened, I could feel a torrent of flames welling up in the astral plane all around me. It told me to channel them into the doorway, into my father, so I did. Oh, I already know what's about to happen. But of course, the person who opened the door wasn't my father. It was my mother. As I watched her flesh blacken and melt, as I heard her scream and I broke into hysterics, I heard the adversary laugh, and at that moment, I realized it was laughing at me. Man, I am so sorry, Glory. I gotta pull a 10th doctor. I am so sorry. Glory nods, a grim expression on her delicate face. Thanks. We're almost to the end now. Thanks for sticking with me. It was like a lever had been pulled. All at once, the bubble popped. I wasn't a powerful servant of the adversary. I was not Harrow's #1 girl. I was a ridiculous little fool who willingly tied her soul to the worst thing in existence. Realizing all of this was one thing. Actually fixing it was something else entirely. I knew that I had to get away from Harrow. That was the first thing to do. So I bit my lip and did my best to ignore the happy babble of the new recruits on the trip back to Feuerstel, and I managed to get through the ride without screaming. Once we were back at the commune, I broke into Harrow's safe, stole all the commune's resources, and ran. I don't know when Harrow realized what I'd done or whether he even cared. All I know is that nobody came after me, so I kept running and running until I got to Berlin. Getting past the wall was fairly simple. You know how easy it is to obtain falsified papers. The biggest obstacle that I faced during my flight was the adversary itself. I could run from Harrow, but how do you run from something that's tied to your own soul? Ah, okay, now we're getting to the cybernetics. I have a feeling that I know. The haunted look in Glory's eyes is heartbreaking. She gives you another curt, grim nod. I walked into the office of the first street doc I could find, pointed at all the biggest, bulkiest pieces of cyberware that he had on display, and told him to put them into me. He tried to upsell me on better merchandise, arguing that what I was asking for was old and inefficient, better suited to be installed in a museum than in a body. He told me that I'd be shredding my essence and that once it was gone, I'd never be able to get it back. I stuck to my guns. After all, shredding my essence was the whole point. Glory looks up at you. Her eyes are sunken and hollow, and the aura of loss about her is palpable. She looks like a woman who has been through hell, quite literally too. That's all for now, Wretch. You've heard the tale, and you know why I am the way I am. You know the things I've done, and how much I have to atone for. If you still want my company, fine. If I've lost your friendship, I understand that too. But for now, I need to be alone. Man, that is... Let's see if we can talk to her again. We've got a job to prepare for, Wretch. I don't have any more time to talk. Hit me up after the run if you like, but for now I need some space. Okay, looks like we've reached the end of the dialogue options with Glory. That was a tragic tale, man. But it's good that we got, that we're friends with Glory now. We've broken that robotic shell. And looking at the time, wow, this story time almost lasted the entire episode. So I think I'm going to end it here, and now we will go talk to Paul, I promise, at the next episode. But if you guys like story time with Glory, go ahead and click like down below, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment. That'd be a big help. And we'll see you next time. Later days, everyone.